Welcome out. It is week 5, our final week of our time together with Veterans Voices. I'm going to jump right into the calendar so we can not spend too much time thinking about where we're going. All right, so for week 5, we're going to look at veterans' involvement in modern social movements. We're going to look at specifically anti-war and demining campaigns. We're going to look at some representations of veterans in the media and popular culture to give you an idea of sort of what's out there. You probably are familiar with a lot of this stuff. For the reading, this is where you need to find a veteran authored book addressing a veteran's issue. So this is going to be a little bit difficult for you if you haven't been looking for the book yet. Hopefully, all of you have thought about the book that you want to use and have already been working on uh, getting this book. Um, Now, if you have not yet procured the book, I would recommend getting one that is both short and that is uh, engaging and most probably widely available in digital formats. Um, I would allow something like Sun Tzu's Art of War. Maybe you've read that for other classes. There's The Forever War by Joe Haldeman, Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose, A Soldier's Story by Omar Bradley, The Good Soldiers by David Finkel, American Sniper by Chris Kyle with his ghostwriter. There's The Things We Carry by Tim O'Brien. That's another good one. Black Hawk Down by Mark Bowden. Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Uh, let's see. Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. Old Man's War by John Scalzi. The Killer Angels by Michael Shara. That's a Civil War one. The Hunt for Red October by Tom Clancy. Um, so the some of the best ones that you'll find are pretty widely known already are like The Things We Carried in Ender's Game and Old Man's War by Joe Sarnowski, and Catch 22 by Joe Heller, and Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. Those are ones that people already know about that are veteran authored. If you're choosing one of those to review that's pretty widely known already, just give a justification as to why this is important to modern veterans and why we need to rehash this when you're demonstrating your book review. Um, because there are lots of veteran authored books coming out right now, and it would be better to pick something that is recent. But if you're down to the wire and you just need something to review, any of those would be a good choice. So that is first part here. Viewing, we've got episode 85, Green Beret Ryan Hendrickson's journey from IED injury to landmine removal. This is talking about a mine removal campaign that was founded by Ryan Hendrickson. The Green Berets are the Army Special Forces. That's the unit that I was in. And they often are at the forefront of sort of social movements because the Green Berets are picked generally from among very intelligent soldiers who have lots of high capacity, and those high capacities are often honed during their time in the Green Berets. For writing, we're looking for that book review of a veteran authored book addressing a veteran's issue written in the last 4 years again. So I'm going to take off the requirement that it's written in the last 4 years simply because I know that some of you have been procrastinating your book selections. But I did note that you should choose your book in week 2. So for discussion this week, I want you to gather in revision groups to help each other revise book reviews. For your revision groups, just post in the discussion forum. I'm not going to create groups, so that will be obvious in there. Just try to uh, you know put your book review out there and get people to uh, give you feedback on it. So when you're leaving feedback on somebody's book review, make sure that that feedback is voluminous and very useful and constructive and kind, and that you're touching on all of the pieces that make a good book review. And I believe I put that book review sheet out there for y'all. Do look for that. It should be on the module. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen here for a second. And I'm going to make myself a little smaller here so I can see my notes. All right. So this is the final and culminating session of our course, Veterans Voices. This week, we turn our gaze toward two dynamic and urgent terrains. That is veterans' involvement in modern social movements, as well as anti-war activism and humanitarian demining campaigns. And then we're also going to focus on the contemporary representation of veterans in media and popular culture across film and television and literature and new media and gaming. Additionally, we're going to focus on two practical skills to advance your writing and professional development. The first thing is going to be crafting your book review. I'm going to give you some advice on crafting your book review for the Journal of Veteran Studies. I'm going to give you some guidance on critical voice, structure, citations, and how to meaningfully engage with your veteran authored texts. Second, you're going to receive step-by-step advice on building a digital writing portfolio using those free platforms that I've talked about before. This is to showcase your work as you move forward beyond the course, but also for this course, it is the culminating exercise, and it is a source of you being able to revise your papers for better credit, or even some credit if you haven't turned those things in yet. I encourage you all to use this assignment to its fullest benefit for you. You also will be doing a creative project if you are not doing the portfolio. So those doing the portfolio, you don't have to worry about the creative project. Those turning in creative projects, you're going to create a URL for that creative project and send it to me that way in the same Dropbox as the portfolio assignment. All right. So thinking about veterans and modern social movements. The history of American veterans is inseparable from the history of activism and social movements. Far beyond being passive beneficiaries or supporters or symbols of sacrifice, veterans have consistently mobilized, sometimes supporting, but more often challenging government policies and national narratives. Just this year, veterans once again demonstrated the enduring power and diversity of veteran activism, gathering in Washington, D.C., and at more than 100 venues nationwide to protest proposed cuts to the Veterans Affairs Department. These mobilizations were not solely about finances. They signaled profound frustration with government accountability, inadequate health care, mental health care struggles, and failures in failures in easing the transition back to civilian life. Notably, the most recent protests were grounded in a tradition stretching back nearly 250 years, encompassing the bonus marches of 1932 and the anti-war Vietnam protests and advocacy for the GI Bill. A couple of highlights for this year. There was the Unite for Veterans, Unite for America rally on June 6th of 2025. June 6th is, of course, the anniversary of D-Day. Thousands of veterans and military families converged on the National Mall to advocate for accessible health care, stable employment, and protection of VA benefits. And it was really a display of emotional unity at the rally that underscored the social and psychological stakes in the ongoing struggle for veterans' rights. Additionally, this year, just recently, in this month, we had in this month we had the opposition to the National Guard deployment in different U.S. states, including California, where our college is located. 2,200 National Guard troops were deployed to Washington, D.C. as well. Veteran groups organized protests arguing that military presence in domestic policing threatens our civil liberties and escalates tensions that are already there. And those actions were marked by thoughtful debate and deployment and about the deployment appropriateness and the militarization of public life. In March of 2025, there were also protests against VA cuts and federal layoffs. Veterans raised their voices against federal layoffs and reduction of the VA budget, directly challenging the political leadership's responsibilities and priorities in advocating for job security within government roles. Each of those instances reinforces a central lesson. Veterans are not a monolithic bloc. There is diversity in veteran voices, but they're a dynamic constituency with diverse perspectives, capable of sophisticated, constructive critique and organization. The veteran as activist is now a prominent and recurring figure in American civil society. Veterans have played a critical role in anti-war activism, often leveraging their firsthand experience of war's devastation to demand peace and reform. Some of the most influential anti-war campaigns in U.S. history, especially with Vietnam and Iraq, were spearheaded by groups of veterans, such as Vietnam Veterans Against the War and Veterans for Peace. Some of the key moments or figures in veteran anti-war movements. There was the actions of Smedley Butler, who was a two-time Medal of Honor recipient and famously published the pamphlet War is a Racket, radically questioning military engagement for profit and advocating pacifism after a decorated career. Ron Kovich, who was paralyzed in Vietnam, wrote the memoir Born on the 4th of July, which inspired the Tom Cruise film and galvanized anti-Vietnam War activism. Ann Wright, who was a former Army colonel and a State Department official, resigned in protest over the 2003 invasion of Iraq and became a key figure in contemporary anti-war organizing. And then there was John Kerry, Vietnam veteran and the Secretary of State eventually, who became an articulate leader of Vietnam veterans against the war, even returning campaign medals in iconic demonstrations. Those veteran activists contributed not only through street protests and lobbying, but also through critical writing, public testimony, and creative media. Research by Hart and Stowe Hunter uncovered the complex journeys of contemporary veterans shifting from pro-war to pacifist or anti-war positions. Some of their studies have revealed that transformation is often triggered by combat trauma, by experience of betrayal by either their government or their leadership, by religious convictions that they come to share, or by education and exposure to new ideas at universities. Hart and Stowe Hunter argue that identity transformation is not merely ideological, but a profound process involving community, collective memory, and renegotiation of masculinity and belonging. Groups such as Veterans for Peace, Iraq Veterans Against the War, and the Mennonite Church in the U.S. serve as new sources for identity verification, supporting moral and psychological healing amidst deep personal conflict. Beyond protest, veterans are increasingly central in humanitarian initiatives, notably in demining operations, a global endeavor aimed at removing landmines and unexploded ordnance in post-conflict zones. Recently, the Ukrainian government and the UN-supported programs have participated in hiring and training veterans, especially those with disabilities, in humanitarian demining efforts. Those programs offer technical and non-technical skill development, competitive employment, and vital humanitarian outcomes. Um, and women veterans and those previously injured by mines are specifically included in those programs. U.S. veterans organizations such as the Veterans Memorial Fund, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, have for decades played leadership roles in demining projects abroad. For example, Project Renew, which was a $500,000 program, involved American veterans in an unexploded ordnance removal in Quang Tri province in central Vietnam, pairing demining with public education to prevent casualties. Now, veterans excel at demining specifically because their professional discipline, their risk management skills, and their nuanced understanding of conflict zones make them both highly effective and adaptive in the field. Humanitarian demining is now governed by the International Mine Action Standards, and it demands precision, patience, respect for local communities, and those are qualities that are often honed in your military service. If you think of the Army values, loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage, those things really lend themselves to demining campaigns. Engaging veterans in demining is not only practical and pragmatic, but also profoundly restorative. Those campaigns offer a path from destruction to healing, transforming tools and knowledge of war into long-term instruments of peace and civil reconstruction. Now, I want to talk about representations of veterans in media and popular culture. A few of these are going to be familiar sources to you. Maybe not all of them will be familiar to, but the fundamental problem with media representation of veterans is that often it um, continues stereotypes. It just exacerbates the issue of veteran integration because it gives the public unreasonable expectations from veterans who are returning from war or from service in general. So, media representation of veterans across media and genres exerts a powerful influence on public perceptions, policy debates, and veteran self identity. These representations have long veered between extremes of the hero super soldier, the traumatized ticking time bomb, like in Ajax, or the pitiable victim. Um, in TV and film specifically, some of the early depictions in the decades after Vietnam often typecast veterans as broken, unstable, dangerous, think like Rambo. Yet shows like Magnum PI, Tour of Duty, and China Beach gradually humanized veterans, albeit wrestling with melodrama and at times romanticizing suffering. Um, as the 21st century progressed, new series and films are beginning to embrace a more nuanced, diverse portrayal of veterans. There are iconic fictional veterans that include Jack Reacher, Steve McGarrett from Hawaii Five-O, Jack Ryan from Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan series, Barry Berkman from Barry, Case Dutton from Yellowstone, Thomas Magnum, and then there are also law enforcement roles that are not really veterans but are tangentially related and often wrestle with some of the same struggles. Each character brings military experience as a complex backdrop, shaping their worldviews, relationships, and approaches to conflict, not simply serving as tokens in the office, right? It's not just the, hey, there's Tony over there, he's a veteran, right? But usually advising on veterans. And in fact, in recent years, media creators have also begun hiring veterans for on and off camera roles, notably in productions like My Dead Friend Zoe, that's led by Army veteran Kyle Hossman Stokes. This is a film that adopts authenticity as a principle, creating characters who are neither exceptional nor monstrous, but just normal ass people, right? Hossman Stokes calls this approach post-traumatic growth, and it's an idea that with growing importance, it's an idea that has growing importance in veteran psychology and storytelling. Um, In literature, veterans often offer memoirs that are raw, unfiltered experiences and foster empathy, helping bridge the military-civilian divide. Often these are written with the help of a civilian editor or a civilian ghostwriter who can help them sort of translate their veteran experiences into experiences that civilians might understand a little bit more um, uh, easily. But authentically written veteran memoirs and narratives, whether independently or traditionally published, challenge this simplistic hero victim trope and honor the spectrum of service from deployment to challenges of reintegration and healing. Those stories are also ones that foreground diversity of the veteran experience, embracing voices across gender, race, era, and types of service. Veteran authors like Ron Kovich, uh, who wrote Born on the Fourth of July, Tim O'Brien, who wrote The Things They Carried, and new voices facilitated by projects like the Military Memoir Project and StoryCorps have redefined the cultural ownership of war stories. Yet, as scholars like Viet Thanh Nguyen, give me 1 second here. Sorry about that. Okay. Scholars like Viet Thanh Nguyen and Joseph Darda point out that a white male combat-centered protagonist still dominates the national public memory, sometimes erasing or marginalizing veterans with different identities and experiences. That's why it's important to realize the intersectionality of veteran identities. Um, Video games and new media are major participants. Veterans are there as players, as characters, as designers in video gaming culture. And recently, surveys have indicated that nearly half of all veterans aged 22 to 50 are active gamers, with most playing multiplayer games for stress relief, social connection, and mental health support. Notably, gamers communities such as Stack Up use gaming as a means for suicide prevention and team building. Media representations of veterans in games have evolved as well. While games like Call of Duty tend to reinforce elite operator identities, others, such as Life is Strange, consciously subvert those stereotypes, portraying veterans as nuanced individuals facing real world barriers. And representation in gaming not only impacts civilian perceptions, but shapes veterans' own recovery and reintegration journeys. Now, in journalism and news media, news coverage contains coverage remaining a double-edged sword. Mainstream journalism often spotlights either the valiant heroism of a damaged or the damaged veteran, right? PTSD, homelessness, system injustice, treating veteran stories as object lessons in sacrifice or failure. Um, Analysis of social media trends shows news cycles can both drive and distort public sentiment, sometimes producing sympathy spikes that don't really promote sustained understanding of veterans. However, there are veteran journalists and authors that are increasingly using digital platforms, social media, and independent outlets to challenge one-dimensional narratives, foregrounding race and gender, and elevating unheard voices. Um, Authenticity really matters in representation of veterans. Um, and it's really as much as diversity. Ethical challenges for storytellers really do abound, though, because we want to avoid exploitation or sensationalism. We want to include veterans as co-authors, co-producers, or consultants. And we want to attend to the intersectional identities of veterans, including Black, Indigenous, women, LGBTQ voices, and disabled veterans, which have often been consigned to the margins. Um, Recent projects ranging from documentaries to podcasts to indie films and online communities exemplify the effort to do justice to the full range of veterans' voices. All right, so that's sort of where I'm gonna draw that line for now, and I want to start talking about writing your academic book reviews because that's a big project that's coming up. It's worth a lot of points. It will sort of determine what your final grade is in the class. So I want to talk about the academic book review because you might wonder, well, why are we writing academic book reviews? Those critically contribute to academic conversations, right? Academics don't necessarily always know what to read, and book reviews drive what's being read. And they do far more than summarize. They engage, they analyze, they evaluate how these individual texts advance our understanding of military and veterans issues. In the field of veteran studies, rigorous, honest book reviews help students, teachers, researchers, and practitioners select the resources they're going to use. It helps them track emerging perspectives and challenge or support scholarly claims. The Journal of Veteran Studies is a leading venue for such work, publishing reviews that reach a broad interdisciplinary audience of historians, sociologists, policymakers, creative writers, advocates, psychologists, all kinds of people. Um, so the aim of your book review is to write one that you could publish in the Journal of Veteran Studies. All right. So that's what we're going to be aiming for. Now, book reviews for JVS are typically 1,500 words or up to 3,000 words for a review essay, but your goal should be depth and precision, not length. There's a standard adaptable structure for JVS or similar journals, um, and that is really the IMRAD, IMRAD, right? So I stands for introduction. You should provide full bibliographic citation in APA 7th edition format for this particular journal. Immediately establish the book's main argument or guiding question, and then briefly contextualize the book in the field. What gap, what controversy, what conversation is it engaging in? That's the introduction. The methods is really going to be the summary of your main arguments in this case. So summarize the central thesis, the major claims that are presented by the author, focus on the logic and organization of the book. What structure does the author use and how many chapters or sections are distinguished? And then keep the summary concise. We don't want a chapter by chapter retelling of the book. We just want a concise summary of what's in the book. So that's that summary of main arguments or the methods section in this case. And then the results is sort of a combination of the R and the A in IMRAD, right? R usually means results, A means analysis. So in the analysis of the book, you're going to analyze the book's contributions in light of prior scholarship. Does it offer original insight? Does it offer new data? Is it a novel or theoretical framework for something else? Is it a primary source? What are the relatable findings to be established or dominant narratives in veteran studies that it's addressing? And then how does the book reflect or depart from key themes like identity and transition and trauma and policy and diversity? The discussion is the final part, right? And it encompasses a few different things here. You want to talk about the relevance and the intended audience. So specifies the book's primary audience, whether that's scholars, students, clinicians, policymakers, veterans themselves, or possibly, just the general public, right? You want to assess the accessibility and clarity for different readers. So if it's filled with veteran jargon, maybe that's not super accessible for a civilian audience, but it might be okay for veterans. And then address who would most benefit from reading that book or using it in a course. Would it be a useful tool for a professor? Would it be useful for a social worker who's working with veterans? Who is going to benefit from using that book? And we're also going to move into a methodology and sources. This is where we examine the evidentiary basis for the claims. What kinds of sources does the author use? Or is it primary and so it uses no sources except the author? You want to evaluate the reliability, the breadth, and the potential biases in source selection, and discuss the methods that are in the book. So Are those methods clear? Are the limitations acknowledged if they're using something that is indeed a study of some kind? If it's just a novel, you don't have to worry about talking about their methods because their methods are writing a book, right? So again, you should tailor this to your specific book. In your critique, which is at the end, I want you to offer a balanced evaluation. What are the book's greatest strengths? What are its limitations or blind spots? I want you to address the quality of the writing, its narrative style, its organization. Make clear and justified recommendations for whether or not this book should become a staple for teaching, for research, for activism, and identify areas for further research that are suggested in the book. I want you to sign your review with your name and your institutional or organization affiliation. For all of you, that should be UC Irvine. And just if you do have some competing interests, be sure to specify those competing interests. Competing interests would be like your uncle wrote the book, and so you want to leave it a good review. That's a competing interest, and probably you shouldn't be reviewing your uncle's book, right? Give me one moment here. I just have to. Okay. In your tone and your style, I want you to use professional, analytical, and precise language. Don't use jargon and don't engage in pretense. That is, don't use fancy words when a simple word will do. If you're looking at whether or not a word is fancy, right? Consider that really the English language has two different major influences. One is Latin and the other is Anglo-Saxon or Old English, right? The Anglo-Saxon words for things are generally viewed by us as simpler because they're associated with craftspeople, right? A boardroom is called a boardroom because board is the Anglo-Saxon word for table, right? Instead of a beverage, which is the Latin Greco-Latin word, we have a drink, which is the Germanic Anglo-Saxon word, right? So if you're thinking about what kinds of words sound fancy, generally they have Greco-Latin etymology. So try to make things more accessible as you can. I want you to balance your praise with some criticism and always justify your critiques with specific evidence. I want you to avoid ad hominem or personally disparaging remarks about the author, however you feel about the book. And remember that you're both reflecting your scholarly voice and serving a reader who is seeking a fair assessment of the book. Now, for APA citations, book reviews should conform to APA 7th edition, which you can find at Purdue OWL. I've linked that site in our class module. You should have clear in-text citations for direct quotations or any key paraphrases. And all references, whether primary or secondary, should be properly formatted, include only if they're cited in the review. When referencing yourself or your own published work, if you have any, maintain that third-person academic distance. So say Dr. Albright did that instead of saying I did that, right? So, for example, if I'm quoting Hart and Stowe Hunter from 2017 on page 52, and the quote says, moral injury rather than trauma alone is at the heart of many identity shifts among veterans. I would put that in quotes. I would put the citation in parentheses at the end. It would be Hart and Stowe Hunter with an ampersand between the two authors. I would give the year 2017 and the page number P.52 close parenthesis. Now, and Purdue OWL will help you with that. Now, I want you to critically engage with veteran author texts as you're doing this. I want you to recognize the context. Is the author writing as part of an insider community or as an observer? Consider the diversity of veteran identities. Be attentive to those voices that challenge dominant or conventional representations like race, gender, sexuality, disability, post-service occupation, and question how the text balances their lived experience with analytical distance. Does it treat the story as sufficient evidence, or is it subject to self-reflection and outside critique? I want you to be alert to nostalgia, to myth, or to unchallenged cultural assumptions, and evaluate whether the text makes a broader theoretical or policy contribution or works primarily as a personal document. Remember, the best reviews reflect both empathy and rigor, acknowledging the courage required to share difficult experiences while upholding scholarly standards. Um, okay, so that's the book review. Do let me know if you have questions about it, but we should be good to go on the book review. Um, at the end of this, I want you to submit your book review to the Journal of Veteran Studies if you feel comfortable with it. All right. That's what we're designing these to do. All right. If you don't feel comfortable with it, you don't have to, but I encourage you all to do so, even before you have my grade on it. All right. Because guess what? Book reviews all come to me anyway, because I'm the media editor at the Journal of Veteran Studies. All right. Um, so shifting gears to digital portfolios. A digital portfolio is an online curated collection of your scholarly work and creative work, making your writing accessible to instructors, to peers, and to potential employers. For aspiring writers, educators, researchers, advocates, a digital portfolio gives you a living curriculum vitae, right? It's evidence of your growth, and it's a showcase of your best work and a platform for reflective self-presentation. Crucially, it empowers you to control your narrative. Given the power of online search and hiring and academic admissions, digital portfolios are increasingly preferred in professional and scholarly circles because portfolios prominently feature your book reviews, your reflections, your research essays, and in veteran studies, that's going to distinguish you. All right. There are free hosting platforms like WordPress and Wix and Folio Spaces and Behance and Canva and Journo Portfolio and GitHub. These are all places where they're user-friendly or free. They sometimes contain templates for you to use, which are perfectly reasonable to use in your digital portfolio creation. And each comes with their unique strengths. And you should choose based on your technical comfort and your aesthetic goals and your privacy needs. WordPress, I find, is often best for researchers and writers. Um, Beginners should use Wix for its ready-to-go sites. There's no coding at all. Students and schools, generally, we like to see Folio Spaces. It's a free academic e-portfolio, and it's got export options. Behance is best for designers, illustrators, writers in media industries, and it gives you sort of a creative professional showcase. Canva gives you a quick launch, blends portfolios with resumes and media-rich presentations. Journo Portfolio is for writers, reviewers, and those in the media. It's designed for journalists, and it has some preset themes. And GitHub is really for advanced users and academics, mostly in tech fields, and it's for code or project-based portfolios. So a lot of universities actually have access to ePortfolio tools like Portfolium or Google Sites or institutional WordPress installations. I don't think we have that at UCI, but I don't know for sure. I would check with the help desk to see if they have that. If you would like to use that. Um, you should also consider what layouts and templates they have, whether they support sections or is this just a wall of text. Is it responsive to mobile applications so that we can see well on our phones? Do you have export and backup capabilities? And can you get a custom domain? Buying that custom domain and paying $5 a month to keep that custom domain can really help up the game of that website that you create. All right, the structure of your portfolio. I want a splash page, and that splash page should feature your reflection letter for the class. I also want you to have an about section that gives your professional bio, who you are, what you study, what you're writing about, and your key interests. And that should include a professional photo, or at least a very good selfie, right? Your book reviews should go in a single section along with your course reflections and your essays, and you should also include your CV or your resume in here. Um, you should include contact links like your email or professional networks like LinkedIn or academia.edu. And then also have media and visuals, make it good to look at. Digital portfolios should showcase your best work. You want quality rather than quantity. And after it suits the needs of this class, I want you to curate your 7 to 10 best works from all of college and put those in the portfolio, as well as anything else that you think shows your development over time. There should be clear navigation. Keep the design simple and intuitive. You can personalize it by adding a short narrative or a mission statement that highlights your values or aspirations, but you don't need to do that. Make sure that it looks good on lots of different computers and smartphones. Log into the site and look at the site from various different devices to make sure it maintains its cohesive nature across multiple screen sizes and devices. You should have visual hierarchy, including headings, professional fonts, plenty of space for white space. And you should regularly update this as you produce more work. I want you to refresh your portfolio every time you visit and archive earlier pieces if they need to be archived. Contextualize each artifact by explaining the purpose, the setting, what this was used for, and then solicit or display some feedback. If I leave you some feedback on the portfolio, feel free to display that, right? So there, you can go and view some examples of well-built portfolios. Um, there's there are student showcases and creative portfolios out there, as well as academic writing portfolios. If you just Google search, honestly, a uh, 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 digital portfolio, you're going to find a whole ton of digital portfolios. So I would encourage you to browse those portfolios and look at things that you might want to take away. All right. I want to leave you now with your final encouragement and some key takeaways. As this course closes, I want you to remember veteran engagement in society is not static. It reflects evolving struggles for justice, healing, dignity, and full personhood. Your writing can both document and shape the evolution of veteran studies and veteran engagement in society. Media representations, for better or worse, set the terms for public debate. Critical, well-argued book reviews and essays are tools for both resistance and reform. I want you to share your work through portfolio sites, through published reviews, and reflective writing, because that's an active agency and self-advocacy. You are not only an observer, but a builder of future veteran studies and the field writ large. It is a young field, and there are still rooms for lots. There's still room for lots of luminary voices within it. The skills that you've acquired in this class, from close reading to critique to digital self-presentation, are all foundational for a rich and impactful scholarly or writing career. So whether your next step is submitting a book review, crafting a narrative, or engaging in political activism, I want you to take pride in the rigor and empathy and authenticity you can bring to that action. All right. You really are the only person who can think the thoughts that you can think. And because of that, you're the only person who can communicate those thoughts authentically. Right? So as you're going about your academic career, I want you to remember that your voice is important. Your voice is authentic. Your voice is part of a diverse chorus of voices, and that any current problem can be addressed by a chorus of strong voices. And only you can contribute your voice to that chorus. For additional sources, you can consult the Journal of Veteran Studies. If you just look that up just like that, they do have their submission guidelines on their website. Um, SJSU has a writing center that includes academic book reviews as a handout. And then there's also APA 7th edition. That those citations resources are on um, Purdue OWL, so feel free to take a look at that. They also publish a book where you can see APA 7th edition citation style. Uh, for setting up or troubleshooting portfolios, most platforms offer step-by-step guides. They have community forums, they have video walkthroughs. Um, you can connect to the Campus Writing Center if you're interested in doing that. The Veteran Center just reopened on campus, so if you're on campus at UCI, you can go take a look at that place. Um, I want to thank you for your engagement in the class, for your thoughtfulness, and your willingness to amplify veterans' voices with clarity, with integrity, and with empathy. It's really meant a lot to me to read your narratives, to hear from you, to understand what these voices mean to you and to your family histories. So thank you very much for participating in this class and for taking the class in general. I really hope that all of you go on to help as many veterans as you can. Um, and maybe that's just the veterans that you know at your home, right? And that's fine. Um, everyone counts, everyone matters. Thank you very much for attending my class. And I hope that all of you go on to wonderful things. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.